So today's job then, it is more wheel speed sensors on BMW 1 Series. In a shock turn of events, we did one last week, and now this one needs 2 of them. So we're going to show you exactly how you change it. Let's get into it. Right, step 1, obviously, let's get the car in the air. Right, obviously step 2, wheel off. Now, to be fair, what I use for this is one of our new tools here, which is this 20-volt impact driver from AutoJack. This thing's an absolute weapon, to be fair. It's brushless, it's a monster, and it's really, really powerful. But what I couldn't believe about this when we got it was the price. Now, if anybody wants to take a look at these, we really recommend them and think they're good. We'll actually put a link in the description below for you, so you can have a crack at them. But to be fair, as you can see, absolutely no messing about. At 20-volt power, just rips them wheel bolts out, no bother whatsoever. And I haven't slackened them with the breaker bar either. The only one I've done is the locker because I don't want to chew it up. But it's a really, really good tool, and it's got a really good torque rating on it, so that might be worth a look for some of you. If you're in need, I'll put the link in the description. You can go have a look there. So the wheel is off, so we've got access to what we need now. Now, if you haven't done this before, what you're going to find, this is the rear, this is rear driver's side. The wheel speed sensor you're looking for is actually just here. So if you can see where I'm pointing, that's the bolt that holds it in, that's the speed sensor, and the cable comes off, runs up this control arm and tucks behind the arch shield here. So you just have to slacken this off with the plastic 10mm nuts, and then you'll be able to chase the wires to the plug. But we'll show you all that in a little bit. Anyway, first thing I want to do is get this slackened off, because they can be a bit tight in there, so we might have to use a little bit of persuasion and a bit of jiggery pokery to get it out. So let's get that undone. So this particular one is a Torx 30. Sometimes they are like 5 or 6mm Allen key bolts, usually a 5, or a 4 does fit sometimes. But all you have to do is wind out that little retaining bolt. It's not very long either, it's only about 20mm long or so, as you can see. Put that to one side, keep it safe, because you don't always get a new one. And then it's going to be time to get the actual sensor out itself. Now, this is where, like I say, they do tend to bind themselves in with a lot of the junk and crud that gets around them, so sometimes you just have to loosen them up. You can use a flat blade or a little pry bar or something like that, and just work at them gently, lever off whatever else you can, and they will start to pop out. But we're going to get this one moving and we'll cut you back on and show you. So this stage, once you've got the bolt out and you're trying to get the sensor out of its housing, this is where it can get a little bit tested, and you're going to need to just exercise a bit of patience. Look, spending a few minutes extra doing this will save you knackering something or breaking it, because I've had these snap off before and leave the magnet part of the sensor in the housing, and then you've got to try and drill it out. So it can be a little bit of a nightmare, but sometimes you have to go as far as putting a flat blade on and just gently working it with a hammer, and what you'll do is you'll start to open up the gap between the sensor and the housing. And then once you get it moving, generally you'll shock it loose. You see how that started turning now? So that is starting to shock loose. So brilliant, that's what we were looking for. Now we know that's loose, I can basically keep working it with the screwdriver, and obviously you can sort of get down there and get behind it now as well. Now some of the bolt hole is exposed, but essentially you're just working it backwards and forwards. You don't want to go too violent with it or anything like that, but just keep working at it, and eventually it will free up and give way and it will come out of the housing. But it's important to take your time there, because you want it to come out whole. You don't want the problem of having to sort of drill the magnet section out or anything, especially if you've never done this before. That's going to be quite daunting, because it's quite hard to get drills and access and things like that. So I'm going to keep working it. I'm just going to knock it back up straight now. That should, in all fairness, loosen it up most of the way that we need it to be able to actually remove it. So like I say, it's a little bit of patience and a little bit of messing around, but it doesn't take too long. You'll soon get there, and then you can just clean out the housing with a bit of compressed air, and away you go with the new one. So I'm going to keep going at this, and when I'm about to slide it out, you can have a good look then. Right, as you can see, that's out most of the way now, so I'm just able to, with the screwdriver, just send that out the rest of the way. So it's fairly long, it's quite sizable. you know, you're looking at sort of 30 mil long or so. So just keep going, like I say, gently until it comes out. And then all we got to do now is unclip the cabling from here. Now, what happens most of the time with these cables, you'll see that from BMW, you do get these cable tidies or cable ties on, but most of the time people put extra cable ties around just to secure everything. So you'll probably have to cut those off. And then obviously if these are sort of past it, then you'll have to put new cable ties on, but just something to be mindful of. We'll chase that cable back and show you where it plugs in. So once you've undone the retaining nut there on the arch liner, you can just pull that back, and if you send the camera in just under there, Dan, you'll see that this is where the sensors plug in. So you'll have one for the brake pad wear sensor here, and then you've also got this one, which is your ABS wheel speed sensor. Super easy, just squeeze the tab at the top and then prise them apart. Again, there we go, and that's it. Your sensor is out, and the new one can go in exactly where you took that one from. So that one can go in the bin. So you plug the new sensor in, and then just make sure you clip it back into that little housing there, just as you can see the brake pad wear sensor is clipped in, and then you know it's solid. You can put the arch liner back down, and then you can send the cable down through the clips along that control arm, as we said before, and then down into its housing. So let's get that bit done. Once it's plugged in and you've got it in the first cable clip, send it behind the suspension spring, and then obviously that'll be sort of on the right track anyway. Then tuck it into the cable clip there. Usually these are broken most of the time, so you might have to pop a cable tie around that part of the subframe, and then you know you're on the right track. So then we can essentially re-engage this cable clip mechanism here. This is the one that sits on the control arm that I mentioned before that is usually broke, but the cables go in the bottom there, and that clips together and snaps shut, and then it clips over the control arm. As I mentioned before, an extra cable tie for security is not a bad idea. These are, you know, they're not the strongest units. They have a little locator pin in that goes on the hole in the bottom as well, so it just keeps it in place. But if you're unsure or it feels a bit weak, get an extra cable tie on. But once that's routed, we'll show you putting the sensor in. Just before I forget, I'm just going to button down the arch liner there with that 10mm plastic retaining nut. And then once that's done, as you can see, when I'll move the camera in just a moment, where we are down here, is about to put the sensor in. So I've run the cables, clipped all that in. Sensor is just here. Now, take your time again with this, because it can be a little bit fiddly and it can be a little bit tight in the hole. I've blown the hole out with some compressed air, but it just does take a little bit of messing about just to get the position right, and it's going to feel like it's quite firm going in there, but it will go. It's just, as you can see, that's going more and more and more. Sometimes just at the end you might need to use the bolt just to draw it in the last couple of mil, but generally you can get it pretty close. And what I like to do at this point is, just so I know I've got it aligned properly, I like to just wind the bolt in a few turns anyway, and then I can just sort of push it home. If I can't get it all the way home by hand, as you can see, that last little bit is stiff, then I will just draw it in with the bolt. So let's get that done, and then you can see how it pulls it in. And it's, you know, don't go crazy. You don't need to do these up mega tight. They're only pinched up anyway, and the tighter you do them, the more problems you're going to run into if you have to change them again in the future, because it's just a nightmare when the bolts are over tight. So let's get the light positioned, and then we'll get round here and we'll just tighten that bolt up a little bit until it starts to draw the sensor in. Again, not the ideal way, but it does work. As you can see, it's pulling it home. There we go. Brilliant. So that's pulled it nicely into the housing. So just a pinch like that, that's all you need. And that is the wheel speed sensor change. So what we're going to do, we're going to do the other side. So we'll go around and do that now. We'll get the car back on the floor. We'll plug it in. We'll make sure it's working, and hopefully the symptoms are gone. Just so you know, the symptoms for this change, essentially the car was juddering, misfiring. It was running horribly, and you had the ABS lights flashing, the traction control lights flashing, which will cause all these issues. So if you've got a BMW that's doing that, don't panic. The chances are it's a very cheap sensor replacement that's going to get you sorted. So if that finishes those symptoms off and gets rid of them, then we know we're good. And the sensors are like 15 quid. They are so cheap. So really, it's something that you can definitely do yourself if you're willing to put sort of half an hour into it per side, and they're super cheap. But let's get the other one done, and then we'll test out and see if the fix has worked.
And there we go, you can see the lights are off inside as well now. Quick drive around the corner, get it up to 10 mile an hour or so, and that clears off all the errors. So if you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more, make sure you drop us a subscription and follow what we do. And we've got some great content coming up this year, including stuff on the Nova, stuff on the BMW, the Hilux. We've got so much coming. Drop a subscribe and follow along.